So, were there any conversations regarding renovations, upgrade, moving the former occupants of that condo, or you now occupying it? Any change in discussions regarding which representative in New York was occupying that space? Did that come up at all?
None whatsoever.
So we have government documents that detail how talks on getting a new residence intensified immediately after the Prime Minister visited you. You asked him for a new place, is that right?
That's incorrect.
So you're in the motorcade with the Prime Minister after he was just in this place that's deemed unfit for you to continue to live in, and you never said, look, buddy, thanks for the job. I could use a new jeweled onyx powder room and a handcrafted copper tub.
No, I did not.
How much representational space is there in the new residence?
Representational space would represent the majority of the space in the new residence.
Okay, that's interesting. So the dining room, living room, jeweled onyx powder room come to about 860 square feet. Does that sound about right to you? That's what the listing says.
I have no idea about square feet. I would refer you to the property division at Global Affairs who handles this.
So that leaves about 2,700 square feet for your personal use. 860 for representational, 2,700 for your personal use. So Canadians are on the hook for paying $9 million for 860 square feet when a perfectly good joint representational space is available at the same property that you're joining us at from today. Is that right?
Your numbers can't be right because that does not represent reality.
Okay, so what is the percentage of representational space in the new location? Please bring us back to reality.
That is a question, Mr. Chair, that should be addressed to the property division at Global Affairs Canada.
Well, you had a great deal of certainty to tell me that I'm wrong, but you certainly don't know on what basis I am. I'm referring to exactly the documents that were provided to us by the department that you're now referring me to. GAC's real estate agent told us that you personally visited the new luxury condo once the selection had been made. Was this a final vetting?
Not at all. It was after the offer had been made to buy it that I first saw it.
Did you ever take a moment, as someone who spent a career in journalism, to question the Prime Minister or anyone on the opulence of this location amid the backdrop of the cost of living crisis that we're facing here in Canada? StatsCan saying that 1 in 4 Canadians are going to be using food banks to feed themselves and their families this month. Did that ever occur to you?
As I said in my opening statement, Mr. Chair, I am well aware of the challenges being faced by both Canadians and Americans when it comes to housing. In this case, I was not involved in any way, shape, or form in the decision to buy this new residence or sell the old residence, and that is entirely in the hands of the property division of Global Affairs.
When you host functions at the event, do you personally prepare the food? Is it done by your personal chef, or are these events catered?
I do not have a personal chef, nor do I cook the food, thankfully.
So these are catered affairs, because we were told by the real property division that the necessity for this was that the shared space that you have at the office that you're in now wasn't suitable to host functions because there wasn't a kitchen to prepare meals. So if the meals are being brought in, couldn't they be brought into your office that you're speaking to us from now?
The bylaws of New York City prohibit us from having a working kitchen in the office. It would be illegal, in fact, for us to put a working kitchen in this office.
If it's catered, it seems moot whether or not you have a kitchen in there. We've been told that you're responsible for all of the trade success between Canada and the United States. Can you tell us exactly, just the number, how much trade business you have generated for Canada? Just the number, sir.
First of all, Mr. Chair, I don't know where or who said that I was responsible for all the trade between Canada and the United States.
Since you don't have the number, I'm out of time. Canadians want to know. You're the $9 million man. They want to know what the value is for Canadians. Sir, keep your bags packed in that new place. Conservatives are going to fire you.
Mr. Clark, although you have not been sworn or affirmed to tell the truth, every witness that testifies at parliamentary committee is expected to tell the truth. Have you, sir, told the truth to the committee so far?
I have, every word of it.
I have a package of emails from the government, emails from the Chief of Staff to the Assistant Deputy Minister of Trudeau's Minister of Global Affairs, Melanie Jolie. She wrote a summary of the $9 million condo purchase. The email states, and I quote, "Both the Consul General of New York and the head of mission," that's you, Tom Clark, "have been instrumental throughout the process with the head of mission," again, you, Mr. Clark, "providing the green light for the selection of the new residence. It is in writing by the department. Tom Clark, you, sir, was instrumental in the condo purchase on Billionaires Row." So again, Mr. Clark, when did you raise the need for a new residence with the Liberal government?
Mr. Chair, I will repeat, I had no role whatsoever in deciding to sell the old residence, buying the new residence, or its amenities, or its location. That email that you're referring to has a couple of addendums to it that I think are important. Number one, it was corrected. That was a person who was not involved in the process of this. I only became aware of this email less than 48 hours ago. I, too, was taken aback by what was in it because it was simply wrong. It wasn't true.
Mr. Clark, let me stop you right there. I don't believe you. Canadians don't believe you. Are you trying to suggest that a head of mission in any country in the world would be completely shut out, would be completely uninvolved with the acquisition of your own residence? No Canadian believes you, sir. This was not a typo. This was a deliberate, focused sentence regarding your involvement. And the timing, sir, is crucial. The email I referenced was sent out June 17th, 2024. The story of the $9 million condo on Billionaires Row became known to the Canadian public on July the 11th. That was a huge embarrassment to the Canadian government, and I'm sure a huge embarrassment to you, Mr. Clark. Your involvement was documented well before. We have the receipts. The department's pathetic attempt to cover up for you was issued on July 25, after all of the controversy, after all of the pushback from politicians, from Canadians who are struggling to put a roof over their head, who are lined up at food banks, who are starving. People who go to the food banks were actually, donating to the food banks. And you're sitting on Billionaires Row, sipping coffee from a $6,000 coffee machine. You can appreciate how appalling that is to Canadians. So again, sir, I ask for honesty. When did you bring up the need for a new residence?
Mr. Chair, I will repeat once again, and please, if you wish, you can put me under oath on this. I had nothing to do with the decision to sell the old OR. I had nothing to do with the decision to buy the new OR. I had nothing to do with deciding on amenities or its location.
It's funny, Mr. Clark, 19 previous consul generals to New York since 1961 have all enjoyed the lavish amenities, the wonderful location in Midtown Manhattan of the Park Avenue residence until you, sir, were appointed to the position. And within months, sir, of you appointing the position, and within months of Justin Trudeau visiting you and you hanging out in a motorcade in downtown New York with streets closed, all of a sudden there's a talk about a new residence and a push to get you into Billionaires Row. You said at the outset you'd rather be in Central Park. Now you're overlooking Central Park. You got your wish, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Clark, it's clearly on the record that you toured the new residence. Could you tell us, please, when you first toured the new residence?
I have that here, Mr. Chair. It was April 26th, after the offer to buy had been made.
April 26th of, okay. So
Yeah.
an offer had been put in, but the purchase hadn't been finalized. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. What, from your perspective, was the purpose of that tour?
As head of mission, I was aware that this was going on. Once the offer had been made, I was curious.
Okay. Offer's been made, purchase hasn't been finalized. You're toured around this building. You're shown, the coffee maker, the golf simulator, the bedroom, the bathroom, etc. Is it reasonable to presume that people who were touring you asked what you thought of the place?
No, nobody, not even the people from the mission asked me what I thought of
So
the
you
place.
were going on a tour with these folks, and at no point did they say, "Well, it looks pretty nice, eh?" Or what do you think of this feature, Mr. Clark? It was kind of a silent walkabout. Is that sort of how it unfolded, or?
I was curious as to what it was that they had put an offer in, and I had a look.
Right. So
Nobody asked me
you
what
had
I thought.
you had a look, but usually when someone has a look at something, there's a conversation that unfolds, right? So it would be unusual if you went on this tour of this new property and you were not asked and offered no comment whatsoever on the nature of the place, its suitability or not, etc. But you would have this committee believe that in the course of this tour, there was no conversation about any of those things.
There was no conversation about whether I would approve or disapprove of what they were doing, because that wasn't in my realm of responsibility. I don't do.
No,
real
but
estate.
you took time out of your day. You've talked about all the work you're doing there.
Point of order.
Clearly, you're busy.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Got a point of order. Sorry, I can't see who it is. Go ahead.
It's MP Chahal here.
Go ahead, Mr. Shah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My point of order, I've heard it from a number of speakers and previously from Ms. Kuzi and Mr. Brock, particularly prior to that. And now Mr. Genuis is also leaning into his mic, speaking quite loud and aggressively. And,
Mr. Shaw, what is your point of order, please?
My point of order is for the health and safety of interpreters. If
Mr.
the speakers
Shahal,
don't
let me
mind,
just say this
us
once,
speaking
because
so loud.
I seem to have to say it every single time to new people on this committee. If there is an issue with the interpreters, they will contact the clerk. You do not need to interrupt the proceedings. Thank you very
Can I
much.
speak Mr. Macaulay, if I could just finish. All I'm saying
No,
is...
that's not a point
I'm
of order. If there's
online.
an issue, Mr. Shahal, the interpreters will advise the clerk, but I do appreciate your concern
I would
for
just
them.
ask respectively if speakers could not speak so loudly or yell into the mics.
That's not a point of order.
If he
but
could not
thank
speak
you.
at all, we'd appreciate that.
Mr. Genuis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for showing Mr. Chahal how a committee chair is supposed to operate. Mr. Clark, back to you. You're describing this scenario that seems kind of fanciful to me, right? The purchase has not been complete yet. An offer's been made, but the purchase has not been complete. And you are brought to tour the property. Now, normally, when somebody is touring a property that they might live in the course of that tour, a conversation is going to happen about the suitability of the place. If you were staying miles away from this decision, it would have been natural for you to not go on the tour. Ostensibly, you had a reason for going on the tour, though. So when you went on this tour, before the property had been purchased, you were shown the glorious features and amenities of this property. You would have us believe that you said absolutely nothing about them, that nobody asked, does this seem like a suitable place? There was no back and forth whatsoever. You just looked at it, were silent, and then walked back to your office. That's what your testimony is?
That's what my testimony is. I was curious.
Okay. This is
I was
this is
curious.
this is
That's
sort
why I
of
went.
you understand that the tour of silence on top of the email which says you were involved kind of suggest that members of this committee and of the public have a reason to be a bit skeptical about aspects of your testimony. I want to try to get one more question in. The government is purchasing a $9 million luxury condo for you to live in. We understand that a consul general would entertain guests in their residence, but obviously the whole residence is not for entertainment. You're not going to be inviting prospective investors into your bedroom, for example. Now, we have the floor plan of the new space. Would you accept that this luxury condo has a much smaller percentage of representational space, and the trade-off is much less representational space and much more luxurious personal space? Would you acknowledge that based on what you've seen in the tour?
No.
But sir, we have the floor plans. You're not entertaining people in every part of this space. The personal space is a much larger proportion, and it's much more luxurious than in the previous residence, which leans much more towards representational space. That's pretty clear in the floor plans, but you're denying that?
Yeah.
Perfect. That is our time.
So let's say a Canadian who didn't know Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went to buy a condo on their own, and let's break down those numbers. Say they have 20% down payment. Let's say they get a great mortgage rate, which is tough after 9 years of Justin Trudeau and the economic vandalism that he's perpetrated on Canadians. That'd work out to about $42,000 a month for your residence. How much do you pay in rent each month for your official residence? Just the number, please.
$1,800.
$1,800 on $42,000 a month. So it's fair to say that you're getting a massive subsidy worth tens of thousands of dollars for your rent every single month. Is that right?
No.
Okay, so what's the cost and what are you paying, Mr. Clark? Because the difference is being paid by someone. That someone is Canadian taxpayers. So it's being subsidized by the government of Canada. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. I pay what the department asks me to pay. I have no role in negotiating that. That's in the that's in my
who pays
terms
who
of my
pays the
employment.
rest? Who pays the rest? It's your answer was $1,800. So Canadians are subsidizing you by the tune of $40,000, $40,200. I think it's unbelievable when you look at the context. 1 in 4 Canadians relying on food banks this fall to feed their families. Do you think that that is acceptable for Canadians, that they're subsidizing your rent during a housing and homelessness crisis in our country, that you're getting a more than $40,000 per month rent subsidy paid for by Canadian taxpayers?
I don't understand your numbers. We're returning more than $7 million to Canadian taxpayers. That's
And
the important number in here.
Sorry, you couldn't do that for less than $40,000 a month in rent? Is that your contention?
I don't know where this $40,000 comes from. Perhaps you could explain that to me.
Well, I did, sir, and I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. It was very straightforward. The terms that Canadians would have to enter into to live in the kind of place that they're furnishing you with, it would come at a price of more than $40,000, $42,000 a month, just for the cost of the residence, to say nothing of the taxes and utilities that they would have to pay. You're only paying $1,800 a month. Is there anywhere else on Billionaires Row that you can rent for $1,800 a month? Let's see if that makes it easier for you to understand the difference for Canadians. Is there anywhere else, any of your neighbors, are they able to pay $1,800 a month?
I have said from the beginning, I'm not in real estate. I don't go around asking people what they pay for rent. So I would not be very helpful to you in that regard.
I question your helpfulness on a range of things. Certainly, it's not present in these responses. Just quickly, you and Ambassador Bob Ray has an apartment in the same building as your old residence. Is Mr. Ray's apartment larger than your apartment?
I have no idea.
Did the U ambassador previous to Mr. Ray occupy the unit that was assigned to you?
The unit that was assigned to me at 550 Park Avenue was occupied by the previous UN ambassador.
Do you know why they were switched?
When Ambassador Ray came here, both were available. Both are properties belonging to Global Affairs Canada.
Does his unit
And
need Does his unit need the major upgrades that would necessitate a move as well?
No.
Okay. Why is that? Was it brought up? It has full accessibility per Canadian standards. That's your understanding?
That's that's my understanding, but I'm no expert on the rules of accessibility. But my understanding is
Okay.
that property was maintained
Okay.
and renovated and is up to code.
Interesting. So they made a $9 million offer on this luxury condo, and you visited it on May the appraisal was done on May the 9th, but you visited it on April 26th. Why were you visiting a condo that an offer had been made on but hadn't been appraised? How did the price get arrived at? I know you're not an expert in real estate, but wouldn't you get it appraised before you make an offer?
I will tell you what I said in my opening statement. I had nothing to do with this process, first, middle, or last.
Look, Mr. Clark, you're Justin Trudeau's $9 million man. Canadians don't know what extra value they're getting for this $9 million. And frankly, your answers today do nothing to assuage the concerns of Canadians who are struggling just to feed themselves.
Mr. Clark, I've listened very carefully to your testimony over the last approximately hour and a half. You've stated on numerous occasions repeatedly that you simply had no involvement in the real estate process. But sorry, Mr. Clark, again, I've got proof. I've got more emails. I'm referring now to an email that was sent to both you and your spouse on July the 17th, 2024, requesting permission to visit your official residence with the contracted appraiser. Please advise if time works with you. Your wife responded the same date and said, yes, thanks. And then I also received a previous email indicating that the appraisers had been to your property the previous year, so either the spring or early summer of 2023 when the events unfolded as we have asked you. So they've visited your property on 2 occasions. You were part of that process. Your spouse was part of that process, which really puts a different spin on your stated position numerous times that you simply had no involvement. Now, I want to go back to the 26th of April 2024 when you visited the penthouse, or the condominium, I should say, my apologies, on Billionaires Row. Who showed you the property?
Who showed me the property? It was the real estate agent, a couple of real estate agents, and I went with a couple of people from the mission.
Okay, and I'm sure that in your lifetime, Mr. Clark, you and your spouse have purchased property, personal property?
We have,
Right.
Mr. Chair.
No, sir, sir, this is my time. Sir,
talk about this, but do not bring my wife into this.
Sir, this is my time. I'm asking you the questions. Thank you. I'm merely referring to an email.
Chair. Point of order. Point of order.
Sorry, Mr. Brock, we have a point of order. Go ahead.
You know, whether this is a point of order or not, let's have some decorum. The Consul General here has nothing to do with his family, nothing at all. It's very bad. Come on, let's get better. We're better than that, guys.
Thanks. Continue, Mr. Brock.
Barrett should review the material that his party has received, because clearly Mr. Clark's wife is referenced, and she in fact identifies herself by her first name. I'm not making this up. It's in the documents, Mr. Cervera. So going again, Mr. Clark, you've purchased property in the past probably numerous times with the assistance of real estate agents. They do their best to sell property to you, to highlight all the features of the property to you. Are you suggesting to Canadians that when you toured this Billionaires Row condominium that's right in front of Central Park, that they were completely muted and you simply walked around aimlessly looking at all the features, not asking any questions, and them not highlighting certain features to you? Is that what you want Canadians to believe? Yes or no, Mr. Clark?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Wow. You have found the most inept real estate agent in the entire world. That is fascinating, Mr. Clark. Let me ask you this, Mr. Clark. Are you a golfer? Are you a golfer,
Depends who
sir?
you ask.
Are you a golfer?
Depends who you ask. Depends who you ask.
Okay. Are you a swimmer?
Depends who you ask.
And do you play pickleball?
No. I
Oh.
don't even know what it is.
I respect that.
Well,
As a tennis player, I respect
you've got two 25-meter swimming lanes in your new condominium. You've got a golf simulator. That's every man's dream to have that. That's right in your building, as well as you have paddle courts. Now, was it a requirement, sir, in your role as the Consul General for New York, to have the world's most expensive appliances?
Order, Mr. Chair.
For instance, the stove alone
Mr.
is
Brock.
some
Mr. Brock, sorry. Go ahead on the point of order, please.
I just think Mr. Brock said it's every man's dream to have a golf simulator, and I just want to clarify on the record that it is not my dream.
Okay.
And I'd prefer if you didn't
Colleagues, could we
misrepresent.
not descend
people's.
to this? Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Brock.
So, Mr. Clark, is it a requirement of your position to have a $19,000 oven, a $13,000 refrigerator, a $4,600 coffee maker, an $11,000 freezer? Is that a requirement of your position, sir, or did you ask for that?
Nope.
Enjoy it.
Mr. Clark, your story, which we don't believe, but your story is that you were not involved in the purchase. But once you saw the place, the amenities, the luxuries, you did tour it after all, why didn't you say no? Why didn't you report back and say this is way too much at a time when Canadians are struggling? You could have at that point said something to someone about this decision, and you didn't. Why did you choose not to, sir?
When they told me that we were giving $7 million back to Canadian taxpayers, I thought that was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, but that's comparing apples to oranges, and we've talked about how absurd those numbers are before. Did they tell you those were the numbers at the time, sir?
Yeah.
They told you in
listen,
April.
It could be it
okay.
could be more than $7 million. It
Well,
could
that-
be $8 million. It could be
that's
$12 million.
that's quite something since the property wasn't listed for months and months afterwards. But your testimony today is that you were told at the time in April the magnitude of their estimated alleged savings. So we'll probably want to follow up on that claim you've just made. Sir, I have a few more questions about your background. Minister Jolie has appointed you twice, at least. The first time was when she was Heritage Minister, and then she appointed you again when she was Foreign Affairs Minister. She first appointed you to chair an advisory committee to recommend appointments while she was Minister of Heritage, appointments that included the CBC. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. What was the period over which you held that position?
I think it was about 4 months.
Okay. Did you recommend the appointment of Catherine Tate?
I recommended two candidates, and the government chose.
Okay, she was one of them?
Yep.
Okay. You were recommending candidates for the board of CBC as well. Did you recommend the appointment of Mr. Harley Finkelstein?
Yes.
Okay. Were any of your children employed by Mr. Finkelstein's company at the time when you recommended the appointment?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that seem like a problem to you?
Mr. Finkelstein is one of Canada's greatest entrepreneurs.
He might be a great guy, sir. I've never met him, but the point is, your members of your immediate family were employed by him, and you used a position in government to recommend him for a position at the same time as members of your family were on the board, and you didn't recuse yourself from that discussion.
Our family was not on the board of Shopify.
No, but they were employees of his company.
Employees, yes.
Yes. Okay.
But not on the board, as you
Right.
stated.
Right. You recommended him to the board while members of your family were his employees. That's on the record, and people can now make their judgments. Sir, you were a journalist until 2017. Is that correct?
I didn't recommend him to the board. Which board are you talking about?
Okay. I think we're past this now, and I have limited time. You testified that you recommended him to be on the board of CBC. Now, you were a journalist until 2017. Is that correct?
Point of order, Chair. Can I have point of
Who's
order?
on a list of names?
Point of order.
Excuse me, point of order. Go ahead, please, on the point of order.
I want to ask about relevance. Relevance in terms of where Mr. Genuis is going with this has nothing to do with anything with regards to the residents in New York City. This is asking the Consul General about past matters in his life and in past roles. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic at hand here at this committee. And I know Mr. Genuis likes to go down these paths and become like some sort of spy detective, but let's get serious here. There's no relevance here, Garnett.
Okay, Mr. Sabera, we always allow
Can I just comment on this point of order, Chair?
I think we'd like to just get to our time. Mr. Sabera, it's not a point of order, but go ahead, Mr. Genuis.
Well, just on the point of order, I think there are a lot of questions today about Mr. Clark's credibility and his close connections with the government. The fact that Minister Jolie appointed him twice and that he was able to recommend people with whom he had close connections when he was in one of those positions. And now he's in this new appointed position. He's living in this. He's receiving the benefits associated with this $9 million residence. I think these things are very much relevant to the questions of credibility that are involved. But I have a minute and a half left. Is that right? 1 minute. Sorry, I'm commenting on the point of order, though. This wasn't part of my time, or.
Yes, it was.
Cutting into my time.
Okay, Chair. I don't think that was clear. Very quickly, you were a journalist until 2017. During the 2011 election campaign, a member of your family had a senior position within the Liberal National Campaign. Did you disclose that at the time?
Disclose to whom?
To the public.
It was not relevant.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief, Chair. I'll speak to some of the concerns raised by Liberal members. They're saying that the minister hasn't had anything to do with it. Well, it was the testimony of officials that the minister's chief of staff, in fact, was part of the decision tree, part of the conversation. We've heard over and over again from Liberals that they don't send political exempt staff to committee and they send the minister instead. So if Liberal members are suggesting that the minister's chief come to appear in her place and then the committee then make a decision on whether or not the minister should come after hearing from her chief, I guess we can have that conversation, but I'm doubtful that that's the case. The minister is responsible for what happens in her department, or she ought to be. Mr. Sorbera took issue with Mr. Genuis asking questions about Mr. Clark's record as a government appointee. I mean, the lack of curiosity, or more like a willful blindness by folks, I'll say opportunists like Mr. Sorbera, doesn't do Canadians any justice.
Point of order, Chair. We're not here to degrade or go at our members
Sabera,
about
on
their
your point of order.
MP Barrett. We're all representatives for our constituents. You don't need to use that type of language to degrade other MPs. Whether it's a point of order or not, you don't need to go down that path, Michael. Come on, you're better than that. I would hope.
Thank you, Mr. Sabera.
Please,
Mr. Barrett.
Seriously.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Sabera. Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please.
Well, if we're invoking first names, Francesco, your lack of curiosity or willful blindness does absolutely nothing to serve the Canadian people. And your interruption of Mr. Genuis because you were simply upset that he was asking tough questions about someone who had been appointed by your government, sir, a corrupt government, and that appointee, Mr. Clark, did recommend the head of the company that his children worked for an appointment. That's a blatant conflict of interest. It's very relevant when we have Mr. Clark saying things here. Mr. Johari had said that, Mr. Clark said that he didn't have anything to do with it, and therefore we have to take his word for it. We have officials from your government who in writing said that, in fact, Mr. Clark was part of it. So who's lying? The government officials or the government appointees or both? And the integrity of the appointments that your government is making, that Minister Jolie is making, she appointed someone who was saying that they were an impartial broadcaster. Meanwhile, during an election, federal elections, meanwhile, one of their children held a senior role with a political party in Canada, with the Liberal Party in Canada. Credibility, integrity, conflicts of interest. Now, these things are very foreign concepts, you know, staying clear of conflicts of interest. We've seen Justin Trudeau twice found guilty of breaking ethics laws. A cabinet of serial ethical lawbreakers. We're going to keep asking tough questions, even if you say our first names and ask us and beg us not to. This isn't about who you know, which unfortunately is how Mr. Clark got that appointment and that $40,000 a month rent subsidy while Canadians are literally freezing in the dark and starving. So the minister is responsible for taking the decision. If she chose to delegate authority, she's ultimately responsible for that. But her chief of staff, we know, we heard from the department officials. The chief of staff was involved in the conversations.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to check on timing here. I don't know how long this committee meeting is supposed to go. I was asked to appear for 2 hours. The 2 hours is up.
Sorry to interrupt your holiday, Ken. This isn't a point of order.
Gentlemen and
No.
lady,
But
sorry.
if we've gone beyond our
Ladies,
time,
continue, Mr.